Not me looking like the Asian version of Regina George trying to convince you guys that I'm good at giving application tips for masters. Yeah, I'm probably not exuberating a lot of intellectual aura right now, but I promise I know what I'm talking about. I think. Ish. I hope so. Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, nice to meet you. My name is Clouds and welcome to my channel. Today I am going to be basically going through my London Business School essays, and I know that a lot of people subscribe to my channel or watch my channel because of my LBS content, and I have tons of messages asking for advice on how to write the essays or GMAT advice or interview advice and just a lot of LBS related questions. So I thought it would be quite appropriate, since we are in the midst of application season right now, to go through my essays. I thought the best way to show you guys how to write a good essay, especially for the Masters in Management, was just to read out my essays to you guys. Not to toot my own horn, but they were, you know, good application essays. They did get me a scholarship to Masters in Management at LBS, so I am pretty proud of them. And of course, I want you guys to, you know, take this advice and write good essays yourselves. So I am going to go through the essays and just explain why I wrote certain things and break down some of the specific tactics that I used within my application essays. For the purpose of time and length of the video, I'm not actually going to go through all the essays that I wrote when I applied to LBS, because that would just be like a 1 hour long video and it'd be too long. So I'm just going to go through one of the main essays, and I will make future videos addressing other essays that I wrote. The question that I will be reading out is: during your time as a Masters in Management student, how will you contribute to the school community? And I believe this is one of the more general questions that LBS includes, and I'm pretty sure that Imperial or LSE or other good universities that have a Masters in Management ask these kind of questions or ask very similar questions to this, which is why I think it's a good example to use for this video to explain how to write a good Masters in Management application essay. Now, I want to premise that in no way, shape, or form am I asking you guys to write the same essay as I did. That is definitely not the feedback to take from this video. It is really important to make your application essays as personal as possible. I just want you guys to understand the kind of structure that you guys need to follow and the kind of things that they are looking for within an application essay, but do not copy what I wrote. That would just be plagiarism, to be honest, so don't do that. And also it won't get you an offer because you're not writing your own story. So make sure that you just use this as an example to guide you through your drafting process. Okay, so let's just get straight into it. So this question is a 400-word question, and I'll just start reading the first paragraph. I start off the essay by saying, as a client-oriented and diversity-driven institution, having strong teamwork and collaborative skills is essential to study at LBS. I like to start my essays with like a very short and brief introduction phrase. So the question is, how will you contribute to the community? I just give a one-liner explaining why it's important to contribute to the community and how my strengths and how the things that I'm about to talk about relates to the community at LBS. So I start off with an introductory sentence saying that LBS is a client-oriented and diversity-driven institution, which will then relate to my next points, which is a good foreshadow of what I'm about to talk about, which makes the whole essay a lot more structured. That's a good thing to do when you write out your essays as well. Just try to think about that storyline and how you want to set the tone in the beginning. I then go on to my own actual experience, and I say, taking the positions of president in Queen Mary Dance Company and events manager in the Abacus Society has enabled me to hone my communication, teamwork, and leadership abilities. These skills were also developed during my position as former president of an NGO, the Buddhist International Association's Young Adult Group. I led and worked with over 50 young adults in creating charity, as well as cultural events such as Chinese New Year, where we had an audience of 2,000 people. So this section here talks about my personal extracurricular activities. It talks about what kind of work I've done within different societies and university. This kind of information is exactly the sort of information that you need to be including in this sort of question. When a university asks you how we will contribute to their community, they want to know what kind of societies will you get involved in, what kind of events will you be able to help with. So by giving examples of things that I did in the past is a good way to show the school what kind of things I can do for them in the future. Another important thing that I did there was I contextualized and quantified the experience that I've had. So when I talk about this Chinese New Year show, I talk about how it involved 2,000 audience LBS members. That is quite important because it gives the reader and whoever's assessing your application context to your abilities and context to your skills and the exact scale of the things that you've done. One advice that I really give you guys when writing these essays is always quantify, and it's okay, honestly, it's okay to exaggerate a little bit. I'm not saying you should lie, like never lie in application essays or your CV. That is a complete no-no. Like there are processes in place and due diligence is in place which will get you fired or get you your offer revoked if you lie in your applications, but it's okay to exaggerate a little bit. So say if you're just a member of a society, you can always repurpose that and say that you're like a quite crucial member or essential member. There's a very fine line between selling yourself and just outright lying, and you have to find the balance between that. Okay, so moving on, I then write, these positions of responsibility have shown that I am motivated and extremely willing to build projects from a conception to a successful conclusion. This is quite a good way to wrap up what I've done, and when I explain the kind of experiences I've had, this sentence then connects the bridge between my previous experiences and what I can do for you. And I would say that's a very good transition phrase to include after you wrap up a particular subject and want to go into the next subject. So that section was just me talking about my previous experiences and what I've done within different extracurricular activities outside of my academics. Then my next session goes on to talk about LBS specifically because that also relates to the question that asks how I'm able to contribute to the community at LBS. So this next session starts off as, at LBS, clubs like Consulting Club, Women in Business Club, and TEDx Club are examples of groups I would be interested in continuing my collaborative spirit and contribute to a greater community. Starting off this next section in my essay, I talk about specific clubs that are part of LBS that I would like to get involved in. This is so important to do in any application essays. This applies to master applications, university applications. This also applies to job applications. Is always try to specify and make it specific to the exact institution or company that you're applying for. Because what you don't want to do is submit a very generic essay that your assessor could tell that you probably sent it to other schools as well. So if I just talked about my extracurricular activities and left it at that, I could literally just copy paste it and apply the same essay to any other school, and that's wrong. Meh. Your application essays could be really, really good, but if you don't come across as someone who's motivated for LBS specifically, they probably won't give you an offer. Okay, so next I say, despite not having a background in IT, I am particularly intrigued by LBS's Tech and Media Club, as I strongly believe that the adaptation to the networked world is indispensable in the upcoming digital age. With 1,920 group members and 242 events with the world's leading tech firms, I would certainly look forward to attending T&M's clubs, tech treks, and bolster their society by bringing a curious mindset and learning instinct. Again, I made sure to specify with numbers and to prove to the assessor that I know and I've done my research about the specific schools. Also in this section, I talk about how I'll be able to bolster the society by bringing a curious mindset and learning instinct. Again, going back to the initial question, which is how I'm able to contribute. So make sure that you don't steer away from the actual application question. It's very common where we actually take an application question and then slowly we start going on a tangent and digressing and talk about things that aren't actually answering the question. So what I did here is I started talking about the societies and the clubs, but I made sure to tie it all back to the original question at the end of the sentence, and you make sure that you don't go on a tangent, which is very common. A lot of people tend to go on tangents, especially in interviews as well. Because it's spoken, you have less control of actually staying within boundaries, and sometimes you just end up giving an answer that has nothing to do with what the question was in the beginning, which in the assessor and interviewers assessment sheets will look very bad. So you have to make sure that you try to keep it within context. Moving on to the last paragraph of the essay. Lastly, as a first-generation Chinese immigrant in Portugal, I stress on the importance of a diverse and inclusive student community and would look forward to enhance this already well-established morale at LBS. So my last paragraph talks specifically about the diversity that I've had within my life. This is so important because now, remember my first sentence in this essay? Let me remind you guys, my first sentence was, as a client-oriented and diversity-driven institution, having strong teamwork and collaborative skills is essential to study at LBS. So my first sentence said that diversity is important at LBS. This is great because at the end, I bring it back to what I first said. So you guys can see that there's like a proper storyline built out in this essay. So I make sure that there is a narrative throughout the essay. Organized by the LBS Student Association, Tattoo is one of the ruling examples of the multicultural energy that is nurtured at your institution. If given the chance to become part of this community, I'll certainly not only attend Tattoo 2019, but seek to showcase my cultural background with my peers through dancing and performing. So when I continue writing about diversity and inclusion, I don't only just talk about my own personal experience and how I'd like to contribute by dancing and bringing my peers involved, but I also make it specific to LBS again by mentioning Tattoo, which is a large cultural event that happens in LBS. And again, it tells the university that I've done my research. I then conclude the essay by writing, "The prospect of furthering my extracurricular involvement in such clubs while studying my master's program excites me and is representative of the input I would contribute to the student community at LBS. I look forward to bringing a fresh perspective and positively enriching the university ethos." So, as you guys might know, every single essay needs a good conclusion. People tend to best remember your first sentences and your last sentences, so make sure that your conclusion is strong. And in my conclusion particularly, I talk about how exactly I'm excited to be a representative member of this community and how I'm tending to involve myself within the different clubs. The conclusion ties back everything back to the original question, and it's a good way to summarize everything you've said throughout your essay. Now let's go back and just quickly summarize what I've done in this essay. So I did a one-liner introductory sentence because, of course, I don't want to make it too lengthy. It's a 400-word essay. I don't want to take, value out by just writing a long introduction. So it's a literally one-sentence introduction, just talking about what LBS stands for. Then I go on to my first section and talk about my personal experiences within leadership positions and extracurricular activities. I make sure to quantify this to give scale and to give contextualization. Then my second section talks about LBS's specific clubs and specific communities that I would like to get involved in. My last section is then about the diversity, which is something I mentioned in the first sentence, where I talk about diversity and what the school stands for. I personally say in the essay that diversity is one of the largest, most important pillars within the community. So by tying it back to this is a good way to showcase that you understand the school's ideologies. At the end, it's a one-liner conclusion sentence tying everything back to the original question, saying that I'm very excited. So that is the structure, and you can see that there is a very linear story and narrative, and that is so important in any application essay. You want to make sure that it makes sense from a storytelling perspective. You do not want to make your application essay sound like you are listing down bullet points. You can't go from one point to another and have these points completely separated and siloed, because it just won't make sense as a holistic essay. And to do this, you have to conclude and introduce each section very well, and how it relates to the overall question and how it relates to your introduction of the subject as well, which is what I explained in this video. So yes, that's been a long video, which is exactly why I didn't want to go through all my essays, because I know that it would take me like hours to go through all the essays, but this is a good example of how to write a good application essay. Also, it's a good example of how to write application essays for jobs, so you can take this advice and roll with it. But again, please remember that I'm only one person and my advice isn't the end-all be-all. And again, don't plagiarize my essay because that would be bad. But yeah, anyways, thank you very much for watching this video. I can tackle other essay questions if you guys want, but for now, this video will do. And yes, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you very much, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.